All right, let's look at another solubility curve problem. Again, if you've watched the other videos, this is another one. I have a solubility curve. It's got two different compounds on it. This is just to give me a little variability in making questions. The units over here is solubility in units of grams of solute per 100 grams of water. The top question we're going to look at here is a solution is prepared by adding 85 grams of LIBR, so I'm looking at this line, to 225 grams of water at 50 degrees Celsius. And then I need to label the solution as being saturated, unsaturated, or supersaturated. This one's a little trickier because I don't have 100 grams of water, I have 225 grams of water. So I'm going to have to do a conversion to be able to compare that to 100 grams of water, which is what the graph shows me. Not difficult, just an extra step. So if I want to compare, how does 85 grams of LIBR compare to the graph when I'm trying to put it in 225 grams of water versus 100 grams of water? How does that compare? All I do is I set up a simple ratio. So for example, I might say I've got 85 grams of LIBR in 225 grams of water. How does that compare to trying to dissolve it in 100 grams of water? So I want to say, what would that look like on the graph, which is in units per 100 grams of water? So I would just do this simple ratio here. 85 times 100 divided by 225. Give me a second to plug it in. And you should be plugging it in your calculator as well to make sure I don't make a mistake. I am sure if I make a mistake, you will send me an email or post it in the comments. That is 37.77, etc., 8 grams of LIBR. So trying to dissolve 85 grams in 225 grams of water is like trying to dissolve 30, let's just call that 38 grams of LIBR in 100 grams of water. So would a solution made up of 38 grams of LIBR over 100 grams of water, would that be saturated, unsaturated, or supersaturated? Because that's going to tell us what our original solution is. Well, how do I tell that? Let's go to 50 degrees. Oops. Sorry. Let's go to 50 degrees. Let's go up to our LIBR curve. And let's come over to the side. That's not a very straight line, is it? Here we go. Let me make it a little straighter. All right. And it looks like, again, this is 55, that's 60, this is 57.5. It looks like maybe 58 or so grams would dissolve in 100 grams of water. So the question is, what if I'm only trying to dissolve 38 grams? Well, that's not enough to saturate it. I am looking at an unsaturated solution. So I can determine whether 85 grams in 225 grams of water would be saturated, unsaturated, or supersaturated by comparing it to what does that correlate to in 100 grams of water, just by setting up a ratio. I do want to point out in this video, before we leave this, is I could have approached this from the opposite direction. I could have approached this from the direction of, let's scale. Let me get this little, but I'm going to keep it down here. All right. Let's scale what's happening in 100 grams of water up to what would happen at 225 grams of water. So let's come at it the other direction. The first time we tried it, we started with the 85 over 225 given in the problem. Instead, let's start by looking at what saturates my solution in 100 grams of water. And we did determine that the other direction. We determined that at 50 degrees Celsius, approximately 58 grams of LIBR would saturate 100 grams of water. That's what would be saturated. So what does that correlate to in terms of 225 grams of water, which is the amount of water we have? So I'm just setting up the ratio backwards, if you will. I'm coming at it from the other direction. I'm solving for x. Again, you should be plugging in as we go along with me to make sure I don't make a mistake. 225 equals, and that gives me 130.5 grams of LIBR. So what this tells me is in order to saturate 225 grams of water, I would need to add 130.5 grams of LIBR. I'm only trying to add 85. I'm not adding enough to saturate it. I come to exactly the same conclusion. That is an unsaturated solution.